any change in a pattern of behavior or routine can cause grief. It's just the things that we don't really think about.
And so a lot of times we're not even allowing people to, first of all, acknowledge that that is a valid loss. All of those are valid losses, or to be able to grieve it. Welcome to the Empowered and in Control podcast, the podcast that helps people who have been impacted by domestic abuse to heal and regain a sense of power and control after an abusive relationship. I'm your host, Oriana, your favorite domestic violence expert, speaker, and the owner of To Rise Advocacy and Consulting. Today, I have the incredible, the wonderful Teresa Phelps. Teresa.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You know what? I'm so glad that you're able to join me today. Can you tell everybody about yourself, what you do, and why you're passionate about it?
Yes. So I am Teresa Phelps. I am the owner of Balance by Design, and we live in Tennessee. I've been married for 16 years. We've been together 17 years in April. I am a mom, a stepmom, and a business owner. So I just, so there's so much to say. One aspect of my business is coaching, and that coaching is grief coaching, which is providing my clients with information about grief that maybe we should all learn about grief, because what we know as far as our lives right now and how to deal with grief, what is grief, and all those things is what has been said to us in the past, or what we've seen, how other people have dealt with their grief, or what's been said to us, like all these different things, like time heals all wounds, just be strong, replace the loss, usually with food or some other addictive thing, and that's not very healthy. And then a lot of different other things that aren't very helpful in dealing with grief. Most of the time we've learned really well how to bury it, how to avoid it, and how to just pretend like it's not there.
Right.
So part of me helping and supporting clients is being able to communicate those things about grief, being able to identify the over 40 plus experiences that can bring on grief, because it's not just about death and divorce. It's about, it could be moving, it can be your kids growing up and moving out of the house, it could be a change in your health, the things that you used to be able to do. You have an accident or some kind of life-changing event and you can't do that anymore. So it's all different aspects about life, even the good stuff, like getting married, having a baby, getting a promotion. We think, yay, but then all of a sudden life changes, and then so much more responsibility. Even winning the lottery can be great. I mean, I want to win the lottery, but
I will chance it, baby. Look, I have you to guide me through.
Hey, and to help you spend the money.
So, I got you, girl. I got you. Look, that's not illegal. Is that legal? A document? Is that legally binding?
Oh, yeah, it is. It is.
Okay. I didn't say how much. So before we really get into the conversation about grief and loss, what would you suggest that our audience do if they're feeling a little anxious, or in order to prepare for this conversation?
Like, listen to our bodies. I think that's the first thing. If you're feeling anxious, take a deep breath. And that's another thing, is what works for you may not work for me, may not work for others. So we can give different suggestions. So when working with a client, it's like, okay, let's try these different things. Let's experiment a little bit with what may be helpful, because I love breath work. I love just taking a breath and just allowing my body to relax. Another thing is just maybe acknowledging or realizing where the tension is. Over doing this work, I realized my shoulders are up. So just kind of take a body scan of where you're feeling different things and then just relax it a little bit. And sometimes that's hard. It's a practice. It's not something that's just innate because it just feels normal to us. So then it feels abnormal to, bring the shoulders down and take a breath. But a breath can do amazing things right now. And if you need to take some time to step away because we are talking about a sensitive subject, that's okay too, and to come back later when you may have some time to just listen and take in the information without any distractions.
Okay, awesome. So let's give a little context. So when you and I did the grief recovery sessions, I came to you not for the loss of someone through death, but it was the loss of a relationship. And we'll get into that a little bit more as far as the specifics about the relationship itself. But that was the reason that I came to you. And you told me in the beginning, you said what you're starting off grieving and the loss that you're coming for may not be the one that you end up grieving by the end of this process. And that was so true. But one of the first things that we did was talk about the different types of loss. Can you give some other examples of loss?
Yes, for sure. There's over 40 different experiences, and they can be happy experiences, like I said earlier, or they can be, most people just say death and divorce. That's the, top of the list. But moving. So the Grief Recovery Institute, they also share about, loss of trust, loss of body control, loss of, just the intangible things that happen to us, as well as, of course, our kids moving or growing up and moving out, or even the end of school and the beginning of school can be grieving, because any change in a pattern of behavior or routine can cause grief. It's just the things that we don't really think about. It could be, again, like my kids, during their sports seasons, right? You connect with all these people and then all of a sudden it's over and then the next thing happens. So it's like constantly changing things. We don't think that life changes so much, but it does just within, a year. It could be our pets dying. It could be just arguments. It could be our expectations weren't met. Just a whole lot of different things. And when we realize and we can name it as grief, then we could start doing something about it. Sometimes what's normal, what we think of as normal lives, and then we see other people in their lives and the things that they do different. So I'm like, wow, I didn't really think that was unhealthy or a grieving thing, or something that I should be aware of. Anything that any change in our life can be a grief inducing experience for us.
Right. Well, and I think that's so important to note that loss can be, any change, to a pattern of behavior. And some of the things that you mentioned when we were going through the sessions was a light bulb moment for me, because here I am thinking about this relationship. And in my circumstance, it wasn't an abusive relationship at all. It was a really, good relationship with a really great guy, which I will not name him, which he may want me to, I don't know. But it was the fact that because I had been in so many abusive relationships in the past, when I finally get into a relationship with somebody who's a good guy, who's respectful, who, respects my boundaries, who is fun and all of that, this is my person, right? Like this has got to be it, right? And when it doesn't work out due to incompatibility, not abuse, not, cheating or any of the other things, like it just didn't work out. That was hard for me. And so it was hard for me to be able to complete that loss of the relationship. But what I also learned in that process was, like you were talking about, with just changes in our health, right? Because you and I talked about the fact that I've had COVID like 3 times, and I could tell the difference in my memory. And it saddens me that my memory is not as sharp as it used to be, and it causes a little bit of insecurity and all of that goes along with it. And it's just like, wow, didn't really consider that to be loss.
Yeah.
That needed to be grieved. So I think that's really important, that there are a lot of types of loss, and loss of trust that you mentioned is a huge one, especially when it comes to domestic abuse.
Right.
So can you talk about grief as it pertains to domestic abuse and why that's a conversation that belongs together as opposed to it being two separate things?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think many, like you said before, we see the situation as it is. And again, like what we've learned, what we've grown up with, what we learn, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And then as we have relationships, we want the best. We're hopeful. We have all these ideas of what it should be like and how it should be. And then also we have people around us telling us all these different things. We have society telling us all these different things. And then, we're trying to do the best that we can with what we have. But those emotions are still there. Their doubt, their fear, there's all kinds of different things that happen in different relationships. And every experience is different. It really bothers me sometimes when people say, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. No, you really don't, because you're not me, first of all. And second of all, we may have had similar experiences. Like me, my mom died, and then my husband's dad died. They're both our parent, but we had different relationships with them. Mm-hmm. So then you have this dynamic of somebody going through domestic abuse in a relationship. And then there's all these different factors. There's financial factors, there's relationship factors, there's your basic needs, and all these different things. So that's where the loss of control. You feel like maybe you don't have control of things, or maybe I cannot survive without this person. So then we just kind of continue going through the motions and hoping that it'll get better. But that is all part of our grieving. Sometimes in experiences, we don't have a chance to grieve because we're more in survival mode than anything. And then again, having the education, having the knowledge that we need help. But then you got to step out of that. So there's that discomfort of going to somebody and opening up and being vulnerable, because that's another level of the possibility of a grieving experience. A lot of people don't respond the way we want them to respond, or think they should respond, especially if they're experts. Especially so I've had people come to me who are church hurt, who have had a therapist or somebody, a professional in their life, tell them something that may have shifted blame back to them, or just something that wasn't what they were expecting. So then it can be even more isolating.
Yeah.
So it's knowing that, going to somebody, and if that's not the right response that we're looking for, then we have to go to somebody else. But then that takes energy.
It does.
That takes time. That takes, again, because we may need to go through 3, 5, 8 people before we start hearing something that is at least a tad bit helpful, or just somebody who can just say, you know what, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. That is so much. And then to help provide resources, reliable resources, to be able to help that person in that situation, especially if they have kids.
Right. So I'm so glad that you mentioned experts, because from my experience, I've worked in the domestic violence field for almost a decade now, approximately a decade. And when we think about grief and loss and domestic violence, there's a tendency, especially among the general community and also within the world of advocacy, that I don't know why you're upset about having this relationship end. If this person was abusing you, then what are you sad about? You should be happy that you're out of this abusive relationship, but we're not recognizing, we're minimizing the love that they had for this person. We're minimizing the loss of trust, the loss of hope for what they thought the relationship was going to be. And so a lot of times we're not even allowing people to, first of all, acknowledge that is a valid loss. All of those are valid losses, or to be able to grieve it, because we're so busy telling them how they should feel.
Right. And that's where we start talking about intellectually, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But emotionally, in our hearts, it doesn't click.
Right.
Because we have to deal with the emotions. We have to deal with the things that are coming up. Because intellectually, we can reason out anything.
Mm-hmm.
We can just, and then let it go, right? And that's what people do. And like you said, it tends to minimize people's feelings. They feel like they need to isolate more because nobody can understand what they're going through. Right. So when we start talking about, yes, intellectually, I get what you're saying. I understand that. But I need some time and I need the help, because without the knowledge or without the know-how, then we're just kind of stuck in this loop and the cycle of what we've learned without being able to learn anything new or to apply anything new.
Yeah. Well, and, not in the domestic violence specific field, but I think a good example of the losses that people experience and we as professionals not recognizing that would be with a client that was at a different agency. And this was someone who went from being a participant in the program to being a staff member. Mm-hmm. And she graduated the program. She became a staff member. She moved out into her own apartment. Mm-hmm. She got her kids back after them being, in a different program while she was getting her life together. And her behavior, she became very withdrawn, and nobody could understand why she's being this way. Like, what is wrong with you, Mm-hmm. And it took me sitting down, and I didn't know her very well at the time, but I knew these circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I said, so I'm not going to pretend that I know your situation or that I even know you very well. I said, but if I can just make a few observations. I said, you went from living in a house with 7 other women that you have grown, to have a relationship with. They're your family, and they have been for the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then you move into an apartment and you're by yourself.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's hard. I said, you went from being in the program to being on staff, and the work that you did while you were in the program was more hands-on physical labor as opposed to being, an administrator and being on the computer. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like those skills translated into what you're doing now? And she used a couple of expletive deletives and, and said, no, it did not. That's hard. Mm-hmm. You've been without your children for the past 2 years, and now you have to go back into mommy mode of being responsible for 2 other people when you have pretty much had someone taking care of you in this program for the past 2 years. You're a different person 2 years later, and so are they.
Yeah.
That adjustment, I would imagine, is hard. And she just started crying, and it took recognizing those losses and the emotions that go along with that for her to be able to recognize that, okay, this is what's going on with me, because she couldn't even identify it. When people were asking her what's wrong with her, she didn't know.
Yeah.
She just wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. She was just angry and sad and all of that.
Right.
So I think there is a tendency for especially professionals to intellectualize things more than having the compassion. That's why when we went through the grief recovery process, it wasn't just for me. I think you may remember in the beginning, I was telling you, I feel like this would be really good for survivors of domestic abuse because we don't recognize the losses.
Right.
And even that is a good starting point to being able to go and get more help. And to your point about having to go to multiple, we try our best to send people to the resources that we believe are going to help them.
Yeah.
But then if they're not reliable resources, like you had mentioned, if they go and they get turned away, or they go and they're blamed for their victimization, then that does cause them to feel more isolated. And all of that energy and all of that bravery that it took to go get help the first time makes it so much heavier and harder to go to the next person, to the next professional, and the next professional.
Right. Especially if they're in a position where you have this idea that you can just trust them. right? And that's where the gut instinct comes in again, because I believe a lot of us have just ignored that to begin with, and just that's where the hurt comes in, and hurt after hurt after hurt, instead of learning how to have boundaries, learning how, like, what to say and what not to say, or how much of ourselves do we give others, right? Not everybody should have full access to us ever. Lisa Turkhurst was the one that like, on a scale of 1 to 10, this person over here is a 1, this person over here is a 9, and this person over here is like a -55. So it's just learning to be able to know yourself enough to know that not everybody's your cup of tea, that you can say no to your family and they can be mad, and that's all right. And your decisions are your decisions that you're going to live with, whether they have consequences either way, like challenging or good, or, easy or hard. And so that's what it's all about. It's about learning how to know yourself. The client that you were just sharing about didn't know exactly what's going on. So it's helping people just to take a step back and look at what's going on, be like, oh my gosh, that is so much, right? So in that time, you were that sounding board for her. You were observing, and you were just kind of sharing what you see going on and happening for her. So a lot of times I'll just talk to somebody, allow them to share what it is that they may be coming to me for. And again, it's just, I call them stacked losses, because it's this, it's this, it's this, it's the death, and it's the relationships around some, and people grieve in their own way. So you have people grieving, going into the family member's home and grabbing whatever they can, and then you're like, what are you doing? Or then it becomes about money, or it becomes about all these different things. So to be able to identify what exactly is going on and be like, okay, that's just how they grieve. And what's more important to me at this time? Is it being right, or is it just allowing people to grieve and be themselves, but also have those boundaries up when necessary?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, because there's a lot of talk, especially right now, about people who are not even consciously thinking about that they are grieving a loss, but they are dealing with their family members and having to cut them off, right? And there are a lot of young people in particular who their parents are abusive. I mean, we talk about intimate partner violence and all of that, but I mean, there are a lot of people who have abusive parents, and some of those dynamics are still the same, right? The financial dependency, the retaliation, some of it is physical abuse, a lot of it is psychological aggression. And so just trying to wrap their head around, how do I let this person go? And that's something that they didn't know. They're struggling with that. But like you said, there are boundaries that can be set, and people can be mad. And, one of the most important things that I've ever heard about boundaries is that, and I don't remember who said it, but they said, the people who get mad at you for setting boundaries are probably the ones who benefited from you not having any before.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I was like, that is priceless.
And it's hard when you start setting boundaries, because people will literally get upset with you, and it just it could go south very quick. But again, it's, as a coach, I help them navigate that conversation to be able to identify, okay, how do I want to go into this? What things can come up? What do I want to say? How do I want to say it? How do I want to be? Because we're identifying what's important to them. We love that person. We want that person in our life. And then that's our way of trying to change that pattern, change that cycle, because it has to start with somebody. It has to start with somewhere where somebody just responds differently, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, affecting different results.
Yeah. And I think that's an important statement as well, that for someone to work through in their head what it is that they want to say to the person and all of that, and just kind of you being able to help walk them through what that's going to look like. And it was also really good that you pointed out. You love this person. You want them to be in your life. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss about domestic abuse, is that the survivors love this person and they want them to be in their life. They just want the abuse to stop.
Right.
Right.
And what came up right now is, so in the grief recovery, we talk about enshrinement and bedevilment, right? So now you're saying how these experts just see the bad. So that's bedevilment, just seeing all the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the person knows this, the person they're with can be good. They see the good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enshrinement too, where they just see all the good and ignore the bad.
Right.
But in all relationships, there's good and bad.
Yeah.
And so when we start identifying these things that aren't good, along with the things that are good, then we can see the full picture. Exactly. Versus just, okay, it's all bad and I just need to leave, and that's just enough reason for me to not think about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great way to put it in terms of the enshrinement and bedevilment and the way that professionals look at it. Because I feel like if there were more professionals that knew that dynamic, then they may handle that conversation differently. It may be a more appropriate conversation, because it is a lot of times a little weighted and a little biased. But I will also say that if you're working with a professional who is truly a professional, who has had good training, who, is able to recognize both sides of things, then those professionals tend to get it. And so it depends. I mean, professionals are people. Mm-hmm. And so they have their biases and they have their hangups. And a lot of people that are in the helping field have had their trauma, that some of these things touch on their core wounds and all that. We don't typically talk about that, right?
Right. That's very important to know, too, when you seek somebody out, that they're not perfect, that they have their own triggers. And a lot of them aren't really educated in grief. So make sure that the person has some kind of background in grief, has some kind of education in grief. That's why I'm really big on doing the work on myself first, because I don't want to be talking to you and get triggered and start crying because what you're telling me is, hitting on something that I didn't think about, or that's just coming up. But because I can't be very helpful if you're the one going to be turning around and therapizing me. So,
girl, I know, because when I was 3, like, madam, can we please?
Right.
Hey, the Empowered and in Control wheel and its guide is a hopeful tool that I developed for people who are impacted by domestic abuse. It's a healing-centered tool that creates a pattern of positive behaviors that people can use to regain power and control after an abusive relationship. Click the link in the description to get your copy for yourself or for someone that you know who is struggling to move forward after the trauma of an abusive relationship. You can be empowered and in control again. I think that's this is so great. This is so great. I mean, seriously, that's part of why when we did the session and everything, I was like, this is so helpful on so many different levels, because it validates so many people's experiences, because everybody goes through loss, and even if they don't recognize it as loss.
Right.
But because that's the case, we're going to circle back to family and friends and whatnot. What do you feel happens to a survivor's grief when their family and friends don't validate those emotions?
It's really hard when your family, and I've learned over the years too, our family may not be the ones that we to go to during these times. We grew up with them. I think, again, we've learned most of the stuff that we know from them. So we learned about grief from them. So really our expectation of them being a little different during times of trouble, if they're not like that when things are all right and are right. So it's just, so we got to have an expectation, right, from what we see and what our experience is from before. I think it may be even harder when it's friends, because we know our family, we know what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, even if we don't really acknowledge, but we can kind of know, ask yourself, is that the person that I can share this with? Right. Especially if in the past, I've shared things with them before, and I've had family members just throw it in my face or try and make me feel bad about certain things, and because of what I said or what I've done.
Right.
But when it comes to friends, friends, I feel like are, at least for me, are a little different because I get to choose my friends. And, if they're not there the way I think, I'm hopeful that they would be. And this is where it's a good idea, again, to get a list of people, get a list of professionals, start talking to people when life is okay, when life is good, when life is great, so that you have those people that when things start going south, that you can contact. And I like saying I get a tune-up, right? I see people and talk to them, get a tune-up every so often just to make sure everything's okay. Because people come to me in some of the darkest times of their life. And this work is really difficult, especially if you're already going through a challenging time and then you start digging. So that's where the grief, that's where I kind of separated the grief coaching, right? Just to help them through that, to get them to the point of going through grief recovery. So just to help them talk about things, start identifying what exactly their feelings are in that situation, or really the different aspects. Because I've had clients come in, what you said earlier about what you come for, it may not necessarily what is what you'll be working on. So, there's a death, and then there's these family dynamics of parents and then siblings, and then you may be the most responsible one. So you're taking care of the funeral and, all these different responsibilities. And then you have to put your life on hold because you are now focused on this, and then your marriage is going down the tube because all this chaos is happening in your life. So just to be able to help people.
But it does bring me to, how can friends and family members support someone who is grieving their experience with domestic abuse? How can they do that without pushing or fixing or judging?
So I've done all three. I pushed, I fixed, I judged. So I can understand all that. And people will respond different. When my mom died in 21, I realized there's about 3 different groups of people. One group is the ones who avoid and didn't really acknowledge the death. They just kind of had a conversation with me and kind of give you that look like, sorry. And then just kind of, I don't know how to tiptoe or walk around you in conversation. And then there's others that just say what they've known their lives to say. They're in a better place, or God needed another angel, or whatever intellectual thing that they could say. And then there's others that were like, I absolutely don't know what you're going through. I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. And when you need something, I'm here for you. And so to me, if we can get that information to people and how to communicate and how to be there for people and actually be there, right? So that's where being present for them. You say, if you offer, then you have to make the time for them if they call, or schedule a time when it's good for you. And, not that you have to be there for them all the time, but then also help them gain some resources. Because you don't want, if you're not the expert, you don't want them coming to you, because then it can become a vent session, and then you're just exhausted and drained because you're hearing the same thing over and over again, possibly, when you can just give it to an expert professional to be able to help them in a different way.
Yeah. And that's good because, especially in the world of domestic violence advocacy and sexual assault, the professionals are there for a reason, and they're there no matter how many times, unfortunately, that it happens. Victimization happens several times with people. And so those services that they have available are available no matter how many times you need it. And so that is a really good point to make, because there are a lot of people, there are a lot of family members and friends who don't really know what to say, don't really know what to do. They want to be helpful, but they don't have the resources. They don't have the knowledge to do so. And the people who do can sometimes not be helpful. And then you don't want to go back to them.
Right.
So let's talk about podcasts and media. How can we cover this type of topic responsibly?
I would say everybody needs to go through the grief recovery method. Just having the knowledge. And then I feel like the method does very well, because you're not only gaining knowledge, you're learning how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning like immediately. And I think that's where life can get challenging or hectic or just very overwhelming, because we know what we should be doing. I should be eating that apple instead of that candy bar. I should be exercising more. I should be nice to my kids, right? When I'm upset. But all these things we know, but then how do we apply it? And it goes back to, how do I want to be when times are challenging? And in a way, it's training, right? The Navy SEALs train for emergencies, or, to go in and do these things, and they train. How often do they train? Daily. How many hours a day do they train? I don't know, but they're pretty rough and tough.
Right.
But it's all about learning something new, applying it, and then seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And then doing it over and over and over. And that's how I change habits. It's kind of funny when people say, oh, it takes 30 days to change a habit. But if you're only doing something once a day, how much of an impact versus doing it 5 times a day, doing it 10 times a day, right? So that's where reflection comes in as well. It's looking back on your day. What could I have done differently for the next time? And when will that next time be? Because it's going to be again. My kids are going to get on my nerves over and over and over again, but it's up to me to decide how I'm going to respond to them, how they annoy me, or just different things, because that's life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right along with it just being life. Those are emotions, right? And one of the hardest things, people, hear me when I say,
I saw that face.
One of the hardest things going through the grief recovery for me was the emotions, the emotion wheel, and like being able to identify the different emotions and what's going on, right? All of that was hard because, like you said, there are certain things that we learn to do. We suppress our emotions. And so trying to actually identify not just general happy, sad, angry, but like the levels to it, what that actually... Right. I remember having that homework and you were like, are you are you done with that part yet? I'm like, nope, we're not meeting this week. It's okay.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when we start identifying emotions, there's a whole lot of different emotions that I didn't even know that I'd have to look up. Like when I looked through the list, I'd say, oh, that may be it. And I'd have to go to a dictionary. And what does that exactly mean? And then once we start identifying what specifically it is, because back in the day, I used to say, I'm anxious, I have anxiety. Or no, I was stressed. Sorry, go back. I was stressed. I'm so stressed out, right? And then going through the list and doing this work, I realized it was anxiety. And I wouldn't have thought of myself as an anxious person. And once I learned about anxiety and then what brought it on, so then it was just things that I was dreading, or that I couldn't control, or that, whatever it was, then I learned, or I did some work to, what can I do in this situation? So asking myself questions, is something that I can control? If it's not, then okay, I can let it go. And what specifically is it? And you just being able to, that self-awareness. And then also to realize that we can have one experience and have about 30 different emotions just for that one experience. I think whenever I work with somebody, I'll put the emotion chart. I'll give them the emotion chart and say, hey, think of an experience on a scale of 1 to 10. It's like a 3, right? Because I don't want to get them too upset and, going home and like,
right.
F this chick. I want that. Exactly. Right. She don't know my life. Right. Just write or circle the emotions that you feel and just go through it real quick. And almost always there's 25 to 30 emotions. And then they'll choose a different emotion than what they thought going into that. Or another time, one of my friends was doing it and she said, oh, I'm not as mad about that as I thought I was. So it's just a lot of self-awareness.
So self-awareness, I'm huge on that in general. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm all about self-awareness. But particularly when it comes to domestic abuse and things like that, part of the reason that I wanted to do the podcast is because I wanted there to be more resources for self-awareness, right? Because healthy relationships begin with the individual. And so being aware of what your triggers are and the ways in which you decide to trust people, like what are the criteria for that? What you're attracted to is what you're attracted to healthy. Like, you know what I mean? The level of self-awareness from how you process loss and grief grief, all of those things play into it because, of course, some people, like you said earlier, people grieve differently.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes grieving, from my experience, working with, thousands of survivors at this point, grieving can be moving on to another relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Grieving can be substance use. It can be a lot of different unhealthy coping skills.
Right.
And so having that self-awareness to be able to recognize what is happening in your body and why you make the decisions that you make can empower you to make different decisions than you typically would. And hopefully better because they're healthier decisions because you're a healthier you.
Right. And to be able to address those as well, like you said, that's all part of it because emotions are energy. We do something when we feel, right? Again, it's, I feel a lot, so I'm going to go shopping, or I feel lonely, so I'm going to, watch porn, or I'm like anxious, so I'm going to eat, or, like all these different, I'm going to game. Like there's just, in our generations, we each have different things that we go and do. And sometimes we joke about it, but that's all coping and that's not healthy coping. So we wonder, why do we keep making poor decisions? Sex and alcohol was my thing for a lot of years. And I didn't realize how much I coped with alcohol until after the program. Even knowing this, I went back to it about the first 6 months after my mom died. I started drinking a little more, but I didn't realize I was doing it to cope. It was just something I did until the day after 4th of July. I had the worst hangover. I'm like, I'm getting too old to have a hangover. And so I can't do this anymore. And then I realized it was a conversation I had with somebody about my mom during the 4th of July party. And I was just like, that's what triggered it. So there was a trigger and then I drank. I wasn't going to drink at all. And then had a hangover. And so I did a 30-day fast. I was like, I'm not drinking for 30 days. I'm going to make sure I feel these feelings.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest 30 days, but I learned so much about myself and the different ways that I could cope. So if I don't want alcohol, then I can go for a walk, or I can journal, or I can do something else that's going to be more helpful to me and for me, but not make it something unhealthy.
Right, exactly. We're going to pause there for a second. Thank you so much for watching the Empowered and in Control podcast. Hey, have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When people recommended it to me, I had no idea where to start. I didn't know anything about podcasting. And then I saw the ads for the My Seven Figure podcast. Now, 7 figures did pique my interest, but I had no idea how people were making money podcasting. What really got me was the idea of being able to help so many more people through a podcast. So I signed up for the course and the community. It is so thorough, let me tell you. From branding to making sure that it's legally protected to monetizing, they left no guesswork and no excuses. So click the link in the description to sign up for My 7 Figure Podcast course and invest in your future. There are podcasts about everything, but there are certain things that people only want to hear from you. So get started today. People need to hear your voice. We're having so much fun on this podcast, y'all. I don't know what y'all are doing. We're having a good time. Okay, so what does self-compassion look like for someone whose inner critic was shaped by abuse?
That inner critic is like the woulda, coulda, shoulda, the I should be. I think that there's so much because I should know better. I should be in a better place. I should. Again, taking a step back, looking at the situation with different support, so they can help give you a different perspective. I absolutely love talking with people and getting different perspectives, but knowing that at the end of the day, they're my decisions that I have to. So it's being gracious to yourself. And that is a practice. It's learning how to love yourself, because we define love in many different ways. How you define love is maybe a different way that I define love. Society talks about self-love and self-compassion. I find it through my faith in God. I find it in his promises. I find it in the fact that he loves me so much. It's taken me a whole long time to realize that all my poor decisions, all the things that have shamed me, have brought me down, he just loves me like a different love than any other relationship, even greater and better than the way my husband loves me. And to realize that that it's a different love than we know in this entire world. So for me, that's my relationship with God, because the only way I can get through each day is with him.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that...
And learning through that kind of love and understanding that kind of love, so then I could love myself and I can learn compassion for myself. Like, I can only learn compassion from somebody who's truly compassionate. And that's a journey in itself too, because it's unlearning a whole lot of different things that I've learned.
Yeah. Well, I think self-compassion is also something that, like you said, we talk a lot about it, but not necessarily how to do it. And I think that there's a certain level of awareness that has to come from, like you said, the circumstances, like the situations that you've been in, especially when it has to do with abuse, being able to have the education or understanding what tactics were used against you, understanding that, all of these things factor in. That's important, because that can give you a sense of self-compassion when you understand, no, this wasn't my fault. This was something that somebody chose to do to me.
Right.
And you can start to give yourself more grace, because it's not you.
Right.
It really is them.
Right. And we can go back to, well, I made the decision to do this. I made the decision to do that. And then move back a little more. Well, why did I make those decisions? Why do I think this is okay? And why isn't it not okay now? And how do I move out of that? And the only way we can do anything in life is with support. We can't do anything by ourselves. It is so difficult, because we were made to connect with people, to communicate with others. Not everybody, but
some people
there are. Yeah, right. There's a lot of great people out there. Right. It's just finding them, because look how long it took to find you.
I know. Where you been all my life?
I know. Okay. So what would you? Yeah. So there's a lot of things we can't do if we don't know how to do it, like you said. Right. But learning how to do it and finding somebody who's going to be able to share that with you. Yeah.
I love that. So what would you want survivors to know about their grief right now?
Grief is, and this is going to sound bad, but it's truthful. Grief is a lifelong process. There's always going to be something in life. There's always going to be a loss or something going on where your expectations aren't met, where things come up, and there's a way to learn how to handle it, how to manage, and how to heal. There is healing. We can work through the pain to be able to live a joy-filled life. The pain is the glasses that keeps us from seeing things in a different way, and the possibilities, the opportunities that are out there for us. If we hold on to the grief, in the sessions we talk about grief being like a backpack full of rocks, right? Along the path of life, you pick up grief that's like a pebble, throw it in there, and then a bigger rock, and then boulders. And if we don't remove those things, take it out, look at it, and then kind of toss. Do I keep it or do I toss it? Right. And tossing it doesn't mean you forget about it completely. It's just we're letting go of the pain. And it's the pain that keeps us making those decisions, burdening us, overwhelming us, keeping us in anxiety and stress and sadness, anger, rage. I didn't know how much rage I had until I started doing the work. Yeah. Right. And identifying these different things and knowing, especially the loss of trust and all the things that weren't our fault that happened to us, to be able to realize and accept, hey, that wasn't my fault. That's not mine anymore. It happened to me, but we get to choose how we respond to it now. Right. Something that happened, because a lot of people with grief, something that happened 10 years ago, they can talk about it as if it happened like yesterday. And so it's working through that to be able to identify the different emotions behind it. Sometimes it's about forgiveness. And if you're not ready to forgive, then it's getting to a point and say, you know what, this happened to me, but I'm not going to let it hurt me anymore.
Exactly.
So that we can move on with life, so that we can have the joy that we were meant to have.
So let me just briefly summarize my experience with grief recovery with the wonderful Teresa Phelps. So I started the process. It was about a relationship. Much to to her credit, she was truthful in that we started out about this relationship, and not even halfway through, I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good on him. Let's talk about my mother. Right? And so it was going through those things and being able to identify the events throughout life, whether it was really good moments or really bad moments, and identifying whether or not I was bedeviling or enshrining. In that way, in that process, I realized that I was enshrining him because he wasn't perfect. Nobody is, right? But I only saw the good things, and whether or not I was bedeviling my mom, as if there are no good things when I know there are, right?
Right.
And so throughout the process, what I learned to be able to do, like you just said, is to be able to remember the things that have a negative or a strong emotion and not allow it to have the same impact on me, to not have the same emotional impact on me. Making the decision that, okay, this happened. I can't change that it happened, but I can change how I respond to it. And that made the biggest difference in my relationship with my mother, who is still with us and lives with me and all that. So I needed that relationship. I needed to be able to have a better relationship with somebody I'm living in the house with, right? But that's hard to do when, like you said, we know how families can be and the dynamics. So that process for me was huge. And it was also being able to, at the end of that process, be able to write that letter, right? Saying goodbye, not goodbye as in she's going anywhere, but goodbye to the hurt, to the disappointment, the thoughts that I had about who my mom was or should have been or could have been or whatever the case may be. Being able to do that and still move forward.
Right.
I think I told you at some point that process, just that brief time that we spent doing the grief recovery process, made such a big difference for me that it improved the dating relationship that I was in, because I could recognize that even if it didn't work out, which it didn't, it didn't. I'm not going to talk about him either. Even though you might want me to. But again, incompatibility, right? But it made me recognize that that's okay. And that I'm going to be just fine, even though it doesn't work out. And at the time, things were going great. So it wasn't like there was any reason for me to feel like, but I just knew I was going to be okay, because now I know how to complete the loss. If it does happen, I'm going to be sad about it.
Right.
But it doesn't have to affect me the way that other losses have. And I have experienced the death of 3 very, very close people and pets since we did the grief recovery process. And I can honestly say that without having gone through that process first, I would not have handled that the same way. It was my aunt. It was my stepcat. I said what I said. It was... And it was a very close mentor to me. And all of those deaths were very hard, but I handled it in a way that I didn't know I could. Even with being an anxious person, it was so helpful. So I think it's very true that having that support, having people like you that can coach people in the good times, right? To be able to prepare for, because I didn't know, much like you when you went through it. Right. I didn't know I was going to experience all of those losses. Lost my job. Right?
Yeah, that's everything. Yeah.
All kinds of changes throughout the year. But I had been on a journey of self-awareness and just self-love anyway, that it kind of positioned me to be able to handle all of those things better. Right. So if someone feels overwhelmed after this episode, what's one gentle step that they can take?
I always say, reach out to me. Let's have a phone conversation. If a phone call is too much, just email me, or think about something that they really love doing. And go and do it. If it's art, if they haven't done it in a while, just go and do something that's gonna help them connect to something that they absolutely is gonna help them. If it's a walk, if it, like I said, art, if you haven't hung out with a friend that you haven't seen in a while, that you always have good laughs and stuff, try reaching out to them, but don't expect them to just drop everything. It's just, and then those expectations, just realizing that life is going to be hard. I'm a coach, and I'm okay with people being upset with me and cussing me out, whatever, because sometimes you have to hear the hard things. And then when there's breakdowns, there's breakthroughs if you allow them to. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. And it's what you do with those things, though, that matters. It's all a practice. Like, to me, maybe a question is, how do I want to feel instead? And then what are some ways that I can get there? Because it's not just going from overwhelm to peace.
Right.
There's a process. Right. And there's emotions to get us there. It's taking a step to do something different.
Let me tell you why I love this. Okay. So again, when I started the podcast, it was to be able to help people in a different way. It was wanting to be able to reach more people, to be able to give domestic abuse education. What are some of the things about abuse that people need to know but don't know, right? But it's also empowerment coaching, right? Yeah. It's also creating that pattern of positive behaviors that help people get their power and control back after an abusive relationship, right? But also part of the podcast is that once a month I'll be going to do something, right? And I want the audience to come with me while I go do something that either I'm terrified to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Skydiving is on my list. Don't ask me what episode that's going to be, because working up to it, okay?
We'll do it
Calm
this
down.
weekend.
Wait a minute. Or just going to do things that feel empowering to me. So several things that I love to do. And my therapist told me a long time ago that I do better when I do physical things, right? So all the things that I love to do that are physical activities within reason, I'm gonna do. I wish y'all could see my daughter's face, because she is not okay with what I just said.
That's my wheezy laugh now.
Okay. But that's part of what I'm excited about, is like being able to go and do these things throughout the year. There have been things that I challenged myself to do that I was scared of. I stood at the edge of a freaking waterfall, Teresa. I'm terrified of heights.
That was awesome. That's so awesome.
And I was like, what else can I do? And that's the idea. It's like, well, what else can I do? I have to credit the grief recovery process for so many different things, but the support, the compassion, the hard conversations, the calling me out, all the things, I need that. Everybody who knows me knows that I need that, because they call me out all the time, so they know. But I really do appreciate the work that you do. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I was like, if I'm going to do this show and it's going to be empowering and uplifting, and it's something that people need to know that they probably don't, I need you on this show.
Oh, thank you.
So I definitely want to make sure that people have your contact information. So that if you want to get in touch with Teresa, you can definitely do that. And I highly recommend her. I will not have anybody on my show that I do not believe in the product or services that they provide. I promise you that, because especially in the work that I do, trust is so important, and it is earned. And I intend to earn that from you. So before we wrap up, I have 2 more questions.
Yes.
The first is, what resources would you recommend for immediate support or longer term healing?
I do. I am a big advocate of the grief recovery method. I haven't seen anything like it. There are specialists around the world. It's evidence-based. So there's research backed that shows that everyone who completes a program has some kind of healing, some kind of, and the education is so important. Look up, and if you want to start in your own community or smaller, just look up different professionals, start having conversations with them. Look up like somebody who actually has education in grief, or that's their focus or their specialty. starting to have different conversations with people and seeking out different people. And then just being able to have those conversations and share. You just share what you're comfortable with sharing. You don't have to share everything. Just, hey, there's this few things that I'd like help for, what's going on in my life. But definitely taking that step out. And it may be the most uncomfortable step, but you may be surprised at what you'll find, especially in your area. And definitely have kind of like an experimentation mindset of, you know what, this may not work out, this may work out, but being able to just meet different people as well, because you're starting to have those connections, because that's also something that can uplift us when we're feeling down, especially being supported and heard. I think a lot of times we're not heard in relationships, and that's just what we're wanting.
Right. I think that's so good, because to go back to what you said earlier about, you know, seeking out services when things are good, right? And just getting to know professionals and all that. One of the things that I'm a big fan of is creating an emotional safety plan, right? And so in that emotional safety plan, don't worry, I'm going to have an episode on it. You list the professionals, the family members, the friends, the support, the mentors, the church members, whoever it is, the professionals in your area that you have already developed a relationship with. And those are the people you call when times get bad. And the way that I like to explain it as far as the emotional safety plan is that it's like when we're in school and we have, like you talked about the Navy SEALs, it's like when we're in school and you have the tornado drills and the fire drills and the earthquake drills. Well, why do we do that? Well, those things are all scary things, but we drill it so that, first of all, we know what to do when it happens, and we're not as scared when we're doing it because we prepared for it. Right. So it's the same concept, that you want to have these things in place already so that when you need it, you're not as, you know, overwhelmed by it, and have different ways to go about it.
Right.
You know, like you said, everybody's not for every conversation. And so you have to know who you can go to for certain things.
Right.
So my last question for you is, what things do you do that make you feel empowered and in control?
Over the last probably 2 years, I've been really letting go of the extra, really questioning, is that meeting, that networking event, is that really something that I want to spend my time and energy on? Or is this, you know, whatever it is, because I had full schedule. Looking through it, I just started deleting things. No, I really started having quiet time with God, really praying, really just letting go of what I thought my life should be like at that time. You know, I'm 40, and it just,
Me too.
and realizing, you know, my life's not like I planned it, and it's okay. Because there's so many different things. I'm missing out on life because I'm so worried that it's not exactly I thought it should be at this time. So really, again, letting go of the busyness, really pouring into my family. And when I say that, is learning how to have a better relationship with them, because my hurts are their hurts, and they are the recipient of the responses to my hurts. Not to say that, you know, my husband and I don't argue or disagree, but we fight healthy. And with my daughter, I want to be a good mom. I'm a better mom for her than I was to my older two. So letting go of that guilt, and then knowing that I am that mom to my older two now.
Yes.
I just went through a whole lot with them as I was learning how to parent and how to be a wife and how to do all these things. So giving myself grace for all of that, and learning, I think self-mastery is really empowered me, just to be able to take that time to question what's going on, learning my moods, learning the times that I'm challenged, when I'm hungry, when I'm tired, when I'm overwhelmed. And there's certain things that I can control. And then if I can't control them, then just kind of knowing it's going to be a short season.
Right.
And this is the other thing, is when we're in a situation, we believe that life is always going to be this way. No, life is not always going to be that way. Life changes each day. We're just so stuck in this is the way it's supposed to be. And we don't even realize that 10 years has gone by and just everything's different, but you're still trying to solve the problems the same way you did 10 years ago, which doesn't work.
Exactly.
So me learning about myself, I guess that's what it is. Learning the way I am, the way God made me. It's learning to appreciate my body. It's learning to appreciate my gifts, my talents. It's learning to give people my best, knowing when my best is and knowing when my worst is, knowing when to apologize. Because I apologize a lot, but not so much anymore because learning that self-control, that not everything needs to be resolved in the moment, and knowing that my words matter. My words matter to me in my head and to others.
Right. Okay.
I think I hit that again.
Is there anything else that you want to say to the audience?
No, I'm thankful for you and this time that we had together. I had a lot of fun.
Yay!
And if you need somebody, seriously, give me a call. My number is 951-523-7959. I'm still over the last year, I've been revamping and figuring out exactly where I wanted my focus to, or what I wanted to focus on. My husband asked me the other day, what do you want to be working on in the next 3 years? And I realized, because I was organizing last year and just kind of playing around with certain things, but I really love coaching. I really love the grief. It comes up more often than not. So to be able to provide a service and provide a listening ear to people, no matter where they're at in life, that just makes me feel like, I'm living my purpose.
And I can say that you are. When I tell you that Teresa is one of my favorite people in the world, I'm not just saying that. She really is legit one of my favorite people. So call her. But I will put your information in the description so that people can get in contact with you. If you have a website and all of that, we'll put all that information in there to make sure that people can get in touch with you. Thank you so much for watching the Empowered and in Control podcast. I am your host, Oriana, your favorite domestic violence expert, speaker, and owner of Rise Advocacy and Consulting. This has been Teresa Phelps, and I will see you next week. Bye. Bye.